It's our great pleasure to welcome to today's online trend summit Vibha Gupta, founder of No Immigrant, No Spice, or NINS. Vibha, welcome. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today. We've, as a business, been following really closely the incredibly important work that you and other organizations around the world have been doing to shed light on the positive impacts and amazing contribution that migration and immigration has had on our broader collective food and drink and social culture, and of course in your case in US food and social culture. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
If it's okay, could we just start by sort of setting the scene? Where are you speaking to us from, and a little bit about the day job, and then we can talk from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm speaking to you from my kitchen in Oakland, California. Okay. I am currently on maternity leave. I have a 4-month-old, and maternity leave from my day job. And my day job is as an emergency physician, or as you call it in England, accidents and emergency.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's my full-time job, is as an A&E physician. And then my other full-time job, I have 3 full-time jobs now: mother, emergency physician, and nonprofit founder.
Okay, brilliant. all of those incredibly important roles. We might add, definitely. I guess the one in particular we'd love to talk to you about today is your founding role in the nonprofit No Immigrant, No Spice, or NINS. So I would love to, and I'm sure the audience listening today would just love to hear a bit about how you got to that place of founding No Immigrants, No Spice, and perhaps how that was connected to at least one of your other day jobs.
Sure. So flashback to the inauguration of Donald Trump in 2016. I, like many Americans, maybe half the country, were extremely frustrated and downtrodden, and just kind of germinating in that sadness for a couple of years. And then about a year and a half ago now, a couple of things happened. So this administration came to power kind of riding on this wave of xenophobia and anti-immigrant sentiment. And you saw this, there was all this fear that had been coming out. And so in my day job as an emergency physician, I was seeing a lot of patients who are undocumented. I live in California, and one of the hospitals I work in, there's a large undocumented population. And what I was seeing is that a lot of patients were coming in much later and much sicker due to fear of deportation, fear of institutions. And so that was happening. At the same time, there were headlines and images on television of family separation, where you're seeing kids ripped from their mother's arms effectively and put into cages. And so that's in the background. And then a very personal thing happened. One of my dear friends was deported. And then one of the nurses that I had trained with, who worked for 30 years at a county hospital in New York City, like a really tough job, they were threatening deportation for her. So, it just felt like on every level, there were so many injustices. And I felt like, okay, there's only so much like Netflix and drinking that I can do. I really wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. And then I was watching this special on, this comedian Trevor Noah. And he's got this bit where he was talking about all the anti-immigrant sentiment. And he's like, well, if Americans, if you hate immigrants so much, and by the way, he's an immigrant. He said, if you hate immigrants so much, then you're not allowed to eat their food. So no tacos, no fajitas, no sushi, no Thai food, no immigrants, no spice. So you only are allowed to eat potatoes, was his punchline. And he said, because without immigrants, there's no spice. No immigrants, no spice. And I was like laughing, of course, and thought, wow, what a succinct way to capture a really important topic. And so I said, okay, well, maybe I'll think on this. Like, this would be a really great T-shirt. And I just thought about that for a couple months. And then basically what happened is I emailed his lawyers. I put this phrase on a T-shirt. I started an Instagram handle, and then it kind of just gained a lot of traction and evolved into this grassroots organization, which it is today. So thank you, Trevor Noah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I assume he's fully on board with what you're doing and a supporter of the whole conversation and the movement, right?
Yeah. I mean, he certainly didn't. His lawyers didn't tell me that I couldn't. So here we are.
Yeah, that's an amazing story, and clearly lots of sort of forces and factors have come together, as you've said. What it as and I appreciate that NINS is still fairly young in its evolution, but it's moved forward from that kind of founding inspiration. What is it that as an organisation you're trying to do? What's the purpose of No Immigrant, No Spice, and what are you trying to achieve, I guess?
Sure. Yeah. So going from just like an idea and a T-shirt, it has evolved into more of a community hub. And it's a platform. What I see it as is a platform where we're able to elevate the voices of immigrants. And, tangibly, the way we do that is we do like documentary video series on different immigrant chefs. We do a lot of social media. And back before COVID, we were doing live events. And what they were basically trying to bring people together across the aisle, across the political aisle, and just using the common language of food to break down barriers and borders.
Yeah. There's a unity, isn't there, that comes with food. It's something that every day, and funny enough, we talk about this in our own purpose. Actually, one of the reasons that we love what we do is that food unites people. It brings people together every day. All of us, we need it. With there's an intrinsic relationship there. So I completely get that. Can I also ask you, if you don't mind, what your personal immigration history and heritage is? Would you mind just bringing that to life for us as well?
Sure, of course. I'm the daughter of 2 Indian immigrants. My mother was born in Mombasa, Kenya. She lived there and then moved to India and then Canada and then Michigan, which is where I was born. And my father is from India. And so I was born in the U.S. I'm a second generation Indian American.
Yeah. How do you consider yourself, I suppose, in that context?
In what way?
Well, from do you consider yourself American first? And how do you feel about that?
Oh, good question. I think I always say I'm Indian American. Yeah. And it's funny because many people who are like, we say third culture kids or from the diaspora, we have these hyphenated identities. But just because of the way America is and being quite a small minority, I think most people see me and look at me and think, oh, she's Indian or some sort of brown person. And when I've been to India, which I've gone 3 times, and I am viewed there as a Firungi, very much a foreigner, because you can just tell. So I kind of, to me, I myself, I just say like I'm Indian American, and I end up, the people I surround myself with are also people who are kind of like in the diaspora and kind of on the fringes in some ways based on the religions we practice, the people we interact with, the people we marry. So it's a huge part of, I'm very proud of my heritage, and yet I refuse to be defined by some of the more patriarchal parts of my heritage. So, hyphenated.
Absolutely. And in the work that you're doing in the not-for-profit with No Immigrants, No Spice, you must have come across some really inspiring contributions that migration and immigration have made in this particular case on US culture. Can you just bring a few of those to life for us? I'm sure the audience listening today would love to hear some of those examples.
Absolutely. In every facet of American culture, we have the influence of immigrants. So, it's just starting in like American food culture. We actually have a very rich history of indigenous food culture that is now like really coming to life that you're seeing. But beyond that, like everything that has come here has really come through foodways of immigration. And I think we could touch on that later, but you know, besides food itself, I mean, we have a pandemic right now that's ravaging our country, and who are the people on the front lines? They're physicians and nurses and techs and frontline workers who really are, many of them, over 50% of that frontline population are immigrants. They're the ones who are protecting people, you know, from Filipino nurses who came in waves in the 1940s to Southeast Asian physicians who also came in the 60s and 70s. You have like the people who are going to be finding the vaccine, no doubt, like there will be some immigrant contribution there.